Somewhere on a major marine insurer's own website sits a list of boats it will not insure. Not a rumor, not a mood swing from an underwriter having a bad day, an actual published list sitting quietly in the fine print that disqualifies certain boats before an application ever reaches a human being. Geico Marine, one of the largest boat insurers in the country, names it outright. Homemade boats, watercraft already declared a total loss, boats over 70 feet, boats worth more than $2.5 million, houseboats with no motor, even hovercraft. That's the official, written blacklist. 4 sentences of fine print most boat owners will never read until they're the one getting declined. But it's the smaller half of the story, because most of what actually gets a boat declined never makes it onto any published list at all. The written exclusions exist because certain categories are so uniformly bad risks that naming them saves everyone the trouble of an application. A homemade boat has no manufacturer standard behind it, no factory quality control, no hull identification number tied to a company an underwriter can check against a claims database, so it's excluded by name rather than case by case. A boat already declared a total constructive loss, meaning a previous insurer already paid out because repair costs blew past the value of the boat, carries that history permanently, and Geico simply won't take on a hull it already knows failed once at someone else's expense. Some states make that homemade category easy to spot on paper. Washington issues what's called a Z-prefix hull identification number specifically for owner-built or previously unnumbered boats, and boat owners have reported that single letter alone triggering an automatic decline from major carriers, even decades after a boat was professionally finished and resold to someone with zero connection to its original construction. Everything else on this list operates in the gray zone below the written exclusions, declined not by name but by underwriter discretion, and that's actually the bigger problem for most owners, because there's no list to check in advance. Salvage and branded title boats sit right on the border between the two. Geico's own exclusion already covers a boat with an open constructive total loss history, but the discretion kicks in the moment an owner repairs that same boat and tries to insure it again under a new name. Florida and several other states brand the title permanently rather than issuing a clean one, meaning every future insurer can see the boat once failed a total loss test somewhere in its past. Even after a full professional repair and a clean survey, plenty of carriers will still only offer liability coverage on a branded title boat, because there's no way for an underwriter to independently verify that every piece of hidden damage from the original loss actually got fixed instead of just painted over. Ferrocement hulls sit at the top of the purely discretionary category. Built by coating a steel mesh and rebar framework in cement mortar, Ferrocement was marketed for decades as the cheap, do-it-yourself way to build a blue water boat in a backyard, and thousands were built through the 1970s and 80s from mail order plans. The material is genuinely durable when built correctly, but there's no way to verify that from the outside, since the steel reinforcement corrodes from the inside long before any rust shows on the surface. And unlike fiberglass, cement has almost no give on impact, so a hard contact with a dock or a submerged object cracks the hull instead of flexing with it. Owners and brokers alike describe these hulls as functionally uninsurable, and the handful of underwriters who will even quote one price it as one of the highest risk categories on the water. Wooden hulls run into the same wall from a different direction. Wood rot is progressive and often invisible from the outside. Moisture works into fastener holes and seams over decades, and a hull that looks sound in the water can be structurally compromised beneath it. Most standard carriers now decline wooden hulls outright regardless of condition, and the ones that will still write a policy typically require a full out-of-water survey with a moisture meter before they'll even quote a price, a step several boat owners have confirmed carriers won't waive no matter how well maintained the boat looks or how many years it's been with the same owner. Coverage has increasingly consolidated into a handful of specialty classic boat insurers built specifically to understand wood construction well enough to underwrite it properly. the same way Ferrocement and homemade hulls eventually funnel toward insurers who specialize in exactly that risk. If this has helped you so far, be sure to subscribe. High-performance boats get flagged purely on speed and horsepower, and the threshold is consistent across the industry. Once a boat is capable of running past roughly 65 to 75 miles an hour, standard family boater policies stop offering coverage entirely, regardless of the builder's reputation or the owner's driving record. Owners and brokers on marine insurance forums consistently report major carriers drawing that line around 70 to 75 miles an hour and roughly 850 horsepower, and a boat that would otherwise sail through underwriting gets an automatic decline the moment it crosses it, even if the same horsepower on a slower hull, like a bass boat instead of a needle-nosed go-fast, would have been approved without a second look. Past that threshold, coverage moves into a specialty market built specifically around go-fast and center console builders like Cigarette, Fountain, and Nortec, where underwriters typically require a documented boating resume, cap the size jump between an owner's current and next boat at around 10 feet, and issue an agreed value policy rather than standard market coverage. Since a collision at those speeds is a completely different risk category than anything a family policy was priced to absorb. Age works against every hull type on this list, but it functions as its own unwritten category too. Marine insurance brokers on both sides of the border commonly note that boats larger than 27 feet and older than 10 years typically require a professional out-of-water survey before a policy gets written at all, since hauling the boat lets a surveyor check through hull fittings and running gear that no dockside inspection could ever catch. Push a hull specifically toward the 40-year mark, and multiple boat owners have independently reported the same experience with Boat US and Geico in recent years. Coverage simply stops being offered past that point, full stop, regardless of condition, construction material, or how clean the survey comes back, pushing owners of older boats towards smaller specialty carriers, willing to underwrite case by case instead of enforcing a hard age cutoff. Multi-hull sailboats are the one hull type on this list where the story genuinely splits the industry rather than pointing one direction. Specialty multi-hull brokers argue cruising catamarans actually post a lower loss ratio than monohulls of equal value, since a flooded compartment in one hull doesn't sink the boat the way it would on a single hull design, and multi-hulls don't appear by name on official exclusion lists the way homemade boats or previously totaled boats do. But after hurricane seasons wiped out large concentrations of charter catamarans across the Caribbean, sailors on multiple boating forums have reported major standard carriers going quiet on multi-hull quotes for stretches at a time, with entire threads dedicated to owners comparing notes on which company was writing cat policies that particular season and which one wasn't. That's not a permanent name policy the way Geico's written exclusion list is. It's underwriting appetite tightening and loosening with the claims data year over year, which makes multi-hull coverage the hardest category on this entire list to predict from the outside, since the same boat can go from insurable to declined and back again without a single thing about the hull itself ever changing. What ties all of this together is one underwriting reality. A production fiberglass center console has decades of claims data behind it, a known construction standard, and a repair cost an adjuster can estimate before ever seeing the boat. Every hull type on this list breaks that model in a different way, either so predictably that an insurer writes the exclusion down in plain language for Geico's own website, or so unpredictably that no two underwriters will even agree on the price from one season to the next. Either way, coverage doesn't vanish, it just moves into a smaller, specialized corner of the market built around agreed value policies, mandatory surveys, and underwriters who actually understand the specific hull sitting in front of them instead of running it through a formula built for none of the above. So the next time you find that impossible bargain on a wooden trawler, a backyard-built cutter, a boat with a branded title, or anything pushing 40 years old, remember that published blacklist sitting quietly on an insurer's website, 4 sentences of fine print most owners never read until they're the one getting declined. Most of what actually gets a boat declined isn't written down anywhere at all, and the only way to find out which side of that line your dream boat falls on is to call a broker before you sign, not after.